Our Mayor and some local campaigners responded to questions and invited campaigners to suggest practical ways Council can assist local community members from Palestine and Israel. We continue to offer to work with campaigners to support local community members without reinforcing any community divisions. We strive for a peaceful and respectful community here in Moonee Valley and in all war-torn lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor have any presentation tonight? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to pass on my condolences to the Byrne family, same last name as me, but somewhat a distant connection, for the passing of Richard Byrne on the 12th of March this year. Richard Byrne was heavily connected in with both the St Bernard's Football Club and Albert Football Club over his life, but actually originally grew up in Ascot Vale and had some very fond memories there. He was more widely known as the person whose the plane crash in 1993 hit his house in Gilbertson Street in Essendon, and became quite prominent in that space as a voice for the people then. He was a sparky, and later on in life, because he loved talking to people so much, worked at the Moonee Valley Racecourse and the showgrounds, and was loved by many and known by many. So I'd like to pass on my condolences to Mary, Kath, Danny, Marty and Jen, their partners and their children, and thank Richard for all of his contribution to Moonee Valley over the many, many years he lived here.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor? No, I might just take a moment to... Oh, Councillor Nation, sorry.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I've just got a brief presentation this evening, and that's to advise, sadly, that after 11 years and 6 months, tonight will be my final council meeting at the City of Moonee Valley, and today will be my final day. As everyone around the chamber can attest to, juggling council duties with work and family is an ongoing challenge, made even more difficult by the remuneration for Victorian councillors, which averages at around $30,000 per year pre-tax, meaning the majority of us aren't full-time councillors. Personally, over my first 10 years on council, I've been in the extremely privileged position of owning my own business and being able to shape my work hours around my council duties. I know this is not something many people can do when they enter the workforce, and it no doubt contributes to a less diverse group of councillors across the state. However, after COVID ravaged many small businesses in the state, and our household had to close one and scale back another, in the middle of last year, I took up a new position of employment that would require significant travel. And I've been extremely grateful for these opportunities. Last year, I spent extended periods working in Japan and the Middle East, and this year, I obviously spent the first 2 months of 2024 working abroad in Qatar. Now, on my return to Australia, I'm working 5 days a week in regional Victoria, a couple of hours out of Melbourne. An opportunity I'm extremely grateful for, but something that does prevent me from serving this council to the fullest. It was my original intention to see out this council term, but the reality is it's becoming more and more challenging to beam in from motels and hotels from regional Victoria and internationally and still actually do the councillor role justice. With my work life likely to take me further away from Melbourne over the coming 6 months, and a family home down the coast at lock-up stage and getting closer and closer to becoming livable, I think now the time is right to formally call stumps. Being just over 6 months out from the next council elections, it will also still leave sufficient time for someone to step into the void and serve out the remainder of the council term. I'm not going to leave you with a lengthy address like my mayoral valedictory speech, which went on and on for 10 minutes, and we'll drop something a little more personal on my socials. But I do want to thank those past and present councillors with whom I've become really good friends over the years. It can be love-hate at times, but for those of you I'm really close to, you're genuine, caring and amazing individuals, and it's been a pleasure to serve with you. Thanks to the backbone of this council as well, and the three backbones, Helen, Sharon and Uyen. You're amazing assets to the City of Moonee Valley, and I'm extremely grateful for your support and friendship over the years. I think it's fitting. I finished my 11 and a half years on council with a short anecdote from my favourite person growing up, who was my father's late mother, Jean. The final words I heard her speak on her deathbed when I was 17 was, "I've had a pretty good innings." Now and over, I've had a pretty good innings as well, hopefully a couple of centuries, definitely hit my wicket a few times, and now, when all is said and done, it's definitely the right time to declare. So on that note, in typical Councillor Cam style, good night, farewell. This is me logging off for the final time, and if you're ever heading down the coast or travelling through regional Victoria, please come and say hi. Ciao, I'm out.
Well, oh, he's literally gone. Okay, well, Councillor Nation has declared he is leaving council, so, and he has jumped off Zoom. But, you know, I wasn't expecting any of that, obviously, so I will just state that obviously Councillor Nation has been Buckley Ward councillor for the last 3.5 years, say, and previously a Murnong Ward councillor. We worked together a number of years ago in 13-14 as mayor and deputy mayor. So Councillor Nation, we have all achieved a lot within council and over your 11.5 years, so I'm quite sure all of us around the table wish you well on your future endeavours, and I think we're probably all still processing that announcement, but hopefully you can watch this at a later stage. Maybe you won't, but anyway. Okay, well, I would also like to acknowledge, please, and welcome to Momi Kitano and the delegation of exchange students from the city of Matsubara in Osaka Prefecture, Japan. I hope your attendance at tonight's meeting will be a great experience for you all, and I very much appreciate you coming along to see our wonderful city of Moonee Valley. We've actually had a long relationship with the city of Matsubara in previous years, and I've met, in my previous time as mayor, I've met a number of delegations that have come over to Momi as well. Met you a number of times. So it's great to see that ongoing relationship, and I sincerely hope that you love our city as much as we do. I'm sure you do. You keep coming back, so that's a good sign. And wish you all the best for your next however many days you have left in lovely Melbourne. At least you've got a few nice days of weather, good weather coming up. So lovely to see you all. So councillors, next on the agenda is petitions and joint letters. Do we have any petitions or joint letters, councillors? No, okay. So we have now come to public question time, and we have received 7 questions this evening. So the first question is from David McCauley, who is not joining us this evening. So on behalf of David, I'll read out his question, which is: the ramp providing access to Flemington Bridge Station also provides a vital cycling and pedestrian link, in particular linking the Moonee Ponds Creek Trail with Capital City Trail, removing the need to cross the busy Mount Alexander Road-CityLink intersection. However, the ramp is very narrow and steep to facilitate efficient bike, pedestrian and station access. Often there are also share bikes parked near the bottom of the ramp, in particular on the bridge over the creek, which can cause extra cycling hazards. Does Council have any plans to improve or advocate for the overall usability of this area in order to provide an efficient and safe link for all users? Thank you, David. I refer your question to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, David. Through the Chair, the Flemington Bridge train station and associated infrastructure are the responsibility of the Victorian Government. Council will continue efforts to advocate for the community and work with government agencies to enhance active transport and accessibility for this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. The next 2 questions are from Chris Angus, who is not joining us this evening. So on behalf of Chris, Chris's question reads: During the Council's 14th November 2023 meeting, the CEO advised that the Council's report into the options and feasibility of time-based designated off-leash dog park areas would be presented at a Council meeting in the first quarter of 2024. When will this report be published and made available to the public? Thank you, Chris. I'll refer your question to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Chris. Through the Chair, on 10th October 2023, Council passed a notice of motion seeking a report on the options and feasibility of time-based designated off-leash areas. There are complexities that were not known at the time. The matter is being investigated and will be reported once all information and the legal implications are known. This is expected to be this financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. The next question is again from Chris. The 2017 Buckley Park Master Plan proposed an off-leash dog area on the northern oval of the park. However, despite the master plan being approved 7 years ago, no off-leash area has been introduced, nor does it appear that the Council has committed any funding to implement this proposal. Given that many residents have requested this amenity over an extended time period, will the Council commit funding to introducing an off-leash dog area in Buckley Park as of its 2024-25 annual budget? Thank you, Chris. I refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Chris. Through the Chair, master plans assist in guiding the Council's investment in areas, typically over a period of 10 to 15 years. The introduction of a dog off-leash area in Buckley Park is not nominated in the working draft of the 2024-25 Capital Works budget. Instead, the design for car parking, path, and landscape elements within the master plan is considered a higher priority and is included for consideration. Introducing a trial of a dog off-leash area may follow in future years. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. The next two questions are from Frank Costa, who is not joining us this evening. So on behalf of Frank, will the nominated legal point of discharge, in brackets LPD, for this proposal comply with Council's LPD policy and require the development to drain via an underground drainage system and connect to a council drainage asset, thereby eliminating the current LPD which is onto the property at 551 to 553 at Mount Alexander Road, Moonee Ponds? Thank you, Frank. I refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Frank. Through the Chair, the planning application for 338 to 340 Escoville Road, Moonee Ponds, is on tonight's meeting agenda. The LPD assessment is a building permit process and would occur if the planning permit is approved. Officers will assess the legal point of discharge application in accordance with the relevant Australian standards, planning permit requirements, and council policies. While the new legal point of discharge has yet to be finalised, officers confirm that it will exclude the need to discharge stormwater under the existing property at 551 to 553 Mount Alexander Road, Moonee Ponds. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Frank's next question reads, the development proposes installing water tanks to store stormwater for the use of garden watering, toilets, etc. In the event the tanks are required to be drained and emptied for whatever reason, in brackets, no matter how infrequent or unlikely the event is, or if they will rupture, can Council please clarify and confirm that the water will be discharged from the site in accordance with condition number 29 of the endorsement conditions? Thank you, Frank. I refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Frank. Through the Chair, the internal drainage system will be designed to ensure that collected stormwater, including stormwater collected in on-site tanks, is discharged to the approved legal point of discharge noted in the previous question. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. The final two questions this evening are from Declan McGuinness, who is joining us this evening. So Declan, could you please come to the podium and ask your pre-submitted questions, please?
Can you? Yeah, cool, awesome, sweet. Well, it's been an interesting night, hasn't it? So far. So, my first question is, given recent instances where the council has chosen not to directly address specific community concerns raised in formal meetings, could the council please outline the official process and criteria used to determine which questions or issues are deemed to have been previously addressed? Additionally, how does the council ensure that paraphrasing or condensing of questions from the community does not alter the original intent or concerns of the constituents, thereby ensuring transparency and accountability in council communications?
Thank you. Declan, I refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Declan. Through the Chair, Council's governance rules govern the process of the public question time. Community was consulted on the governance rules prior to the adoption as required by the Local Government Act 2020. Governance Rule 61 allows the Chair to determine whether a question is disallowed for limited reasons, including if it concerns a subject matter already answered. It also allows the Chair to have the discretion to paraphrase questions for clarity or brevity, particularly when the questions received do not strictly comply with the public question time guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Declan, would you like to read your second question, please?
Absolutely. In light of Council's recent decision to disallow further questions on certain topics, citing that they have been addressed in previous meetings, how does the Council plan to maintain an open and responsive dialogue with its constituents on matters of significant community interest and concern? Furthermore, could the Council clarify how it intends to support the principle of democratic engagement and ensure that all community members feel their voices are heard and respected, especially as we approach the upcoming elections?
Thank you, Declan. I refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Declan. Through the Chair, Council's public question time is a standing agenda item. As previously mentioned, it is governed by Council's governance rules to ensure that Council meetings are conducted in an orderly manner. The community is also encouraged to partake in other various forms of engagement, including Council's engagement forums, providing feedback via Council's USA website, contacting Council via phone or email, and or contacting councillors directly to inform them of individual interests and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. So now we're up. Thank you, Declan, for that. Now we're up to reports from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports as delegates, please? If not, we'll move to item 9, reports. And the first report is 9.1 MV.
Mayor, as I have a conflict, I'm going to step out now.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Okay, so 9.1 MV-700-2022 at 338 to 340 Ascot Vale Road, Moonee Ponds, brackets Lot 1 on TP 693241U and Lot 1 on TP 684779W. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Actually, it's not tonight because our live screen is streaming. Oh, no, it is. There it is. Okay. So, the officer's recommendation is up there. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Hodgson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bedio, thank you. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Chair, Deputy Mayor. This application is another one similar to last meeting where we have an application within the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre that needs to comply with our floor area ratio moved and approved in a recent planning scheme amendment. The application is for a 5-storey building on Ascot Vale Road, close to the corner of Gladstone Street, and I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation in here because there are a number of conditions in the attachment which I think address and change the advertised plans a little bit to address some of the major concerns. Those include that it's a bit of a funny application. The ground level is sort of split into lower and upper ground level, and the communal open space for the site is located on that lower ground level, so it's just a little bit under natural ground level. The open space is currently in the plans located on the southern side of the building, and the officers have conditioned that be relocated to the north of the building to address the solar access concerns. There are also conditions in there to move the front setback to be compliant with the minimum of 3 metres for applications or for builds in this zone of a residential interface with the street. There's a condition to reduce the number of car spaces to be compliant with our parking policy, and I think that is, the traffic and engineering team have provided some pretty clear reasons for that. I think the reduction of the car spaces also allows for some of the other conditions that have been included, which are to increase the number of bicycle spaces that are available on site to comply with the preferred for the planning scheme, and also for the activity centre zone, and also provision of a multifunctional loading bay. Now, one of the concerns that was raised during the consultation period meeting that all ward councillors attended was about, what would happen for the residents of this building when they needed to get deliveries. And given the location of the building is right near that intersection, as I mentioned, with Gladstone Street, there's not an easy place to pull over in front of the building. And so I think the provision of a loading bay within the basement level of the development is an important one. There's a number of other conditions, and one that I will draw on, and I think will also be discussed further tonight and was part of the public questions, is to do with the drainage requirements. As the answer in the public questions said, that is the legal point of discharge is a matter for the building permit stage of the process, but we do understand that the current drainage from the site is, somewhat problematic, and that the development of this site is actually going to improve that situation from my understanding, and it's going to make sure that the discharge from this site is by means of an underground pipe drain discharged to an approved legal point of discharge, being not the property at 551 to 553, I hope I've got that number right, Mount Alexander Road, to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. So look, there, as with any planning application, there are pros and cons, but I do think that the detailed consideration of this by the officers and the number of, I think, useful conditions placed on the application do bring it into satisfactory compliance with our scheme and planning processes, and I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll be brief. I was going to move an amendment and then I realised I can't, but that's okay. Hopefully another councillor can move an amendment for me. I concur with Councillor Hodgson. Overall, the application meets much of the built form requirements in relation to the activity centre zone, in particular the mandatory floor area ratio and mandatory rear building setback. It is similar to the application that was before us 2 weeks ago in relation to Shooter Street, where the application had some slight discrepancy in regards to an exceedance of the discretionary building height. But I believe we need to be consistent here, and we agreed that that application was suitable. because it met the mandatory floor area ratios and some of the other mandatory built form requirements. And so even though it had a slight exceedance on the building height, that was acceptable because it met the mandatory requirements. So I believe we need to be consistent. This application is quite similar in that regard. Overall, the design response is, I think, quite good, and I'm happy to support, but I'm also flagging that I hope a councillor can move an amendment for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bettio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move an amendment, please.
Yes, what's your amendment?
The amendment reads, delete condition 1D, a minimum reduction of 14 car spaces within the basement levels and re-let it as appropriate, and add an additional permit note to attachment 1 which reads, the legal point of discharge for this development must not be located at 551 to 553 Mount Alexander Road, Moonee Ponds.
Thank you. Do we have those words able to be put on the screen? Okay, so all councillors are aware of what has been moved as an amendment. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? You moved the first motion, so you can't move the amendment. Do I have a seconder for that motion, that amendment? Councillor Sypek? Thank you. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, but I will be brief on it. There's obviously two parts to this, and I think that they're both worthy of debate. The first one is the deletion of some. The applicant asked for a particular amount of car spaces. One of the conditions reads to delete those car spaces. I'm normally of the opinion that when they're right in the middle of an activity centre, a lot of applications don't necessarily need car spaces. We often have a few too many, but I feel that in this particular area, we've had conversations in this chamber about building more car spaces, and I feel like it is on that outskirts where it would be okay. So if the applicant wants them and feels there is the need, and we have also looked for extra parking, then I'm not necessarily of the opinion that we need to delete them in this instance. I know that I've spoken when we're right in the centre of activity centres to be different to that, but I am looking forward to hearing what people say around the chamber. And the second point is in regards to the legal point of discharge, which was touched on by both the mover and the seconder, and I feel that has been will be discussed more, so I will leave it at that at this point. And if there was an appetite for the amendment to be split, then I'm okay with that. Ta.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Sypek, did you wish to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Bettio?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for the amendment. I was meaning to move an amendment, but I forgot I can't do that when I second an motion. In particular, the amendment I was looking to move was that the legal point of discharge for the development, or adding the permit note for the legal point of discharge, there has been some concerns raised by members of the public in relation to the legal point of discharge for this particular development. And whilst, as already discussed by Councillor Hodgson, that is a factor that comes into play in discussion at the building permit stage, I hope that adding this permit note provides some reassurance to those with concerns that the legal point of discharge will not be located at that property.
Thank you, Councillor Bettio. Any other councillor wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Hodgson, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I would just make a request that the voting on this be split into two parts. In speaking to this, the additional permit note to attachment 1, I concur. I think that if it provides some reassurance to those with concerns of this, although I understand that this, is as answered in the public question time, an agreed conclusion. But if it provides additional reassurance, I'm happy to support it. The deletion of condition 1D, I consider I'm not supportive of. I think, I do understand Councillor Byrne's reference to us wanting to consider, having car spaces within the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre. But my understanding of those discussions is that it's really around public parking. And my concern is that, these 14 spaces would not be public parking. They would be parking for the residents of this building. And I think that makes the concerns of the traffic team, where we're trying to have a strict policy around what is appropriate levels of parking for people who reside in major activity centres on principal public transport networks, to limit the number of cars that we're putting onto our roads. The request for an excess of car spaces on this site is in direct contradiction with that policy, and I'm more of a mind to request the reduction, which, as I said, also allows space for increasing by quite a large number the number of bicycle spaces allowed on the premises for residents and visitors, and which I think, in terms of trying to move towards a lower carbon future, is better use of the space, honestly. So I'm not supportive of that part of the proposed amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Look, I'm not supportive of this application, and I'd like to foreshadow a refusal of the granting of the permit for this application. With respect to the amendments specifically, I'll support the second amendment around the legal point of discharge being a permit note. Happy to support that. But I won't support the reduction of the I won't support a deletion of the condition for the reduction for the reasons outlined by Councillor Hodgson. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor? It's just yourself, Councillor Slybeck, actually. No? Okay, well, I shall put the amendment to the vote. Oh, dissent. Sorry. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
I will.
It has been dissent. Sorry.
Thank you. I think I won't necessarily touch on the second part. I think there was pretty much agreement on that one. In regards to the car park spaces, I suppose my logic with this one is when people have guests over to their place, if they've got a spare car spot, they'll park there, and if they're not, they will use the public car spaces, which we are potentially planning on. We want to increase public car spaces, so if we're taking them out of a private development that the developer wants, or the applicant wants, and then like there will be that flow-on effect. There's very few places within the city of Moonee Valley that we are looking at increasing the amount of car spaces for, but this area is one, and I feel like it's sort of in the right spot to sort of allow it, and someone else wants to obviously pay for it within there. So it might only work out to be a slight overflow that saves people parking in other people's in the public spots, but I think that it would still be some until, of course, we get to the point where we're not having car spots anymore. But anyway, we're not there yet. I will leave it at that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Okay, so put the alternative to the vote, and I'm happy to split it into first point and second point. So the first point is, with the following amendments: deletion of 1D, a minimum reduction of 14 car spaces within the basement levels, and re-letter as appropriate. So can I put that portion to the vote, please. All those in favour? That's Councillor Sypek, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sharp. All those against? Councillor Isa, Councillor Hodgson. That is carried. I'll move to the second point of the amendment, which reads, and add an additional permit note to attachment 1, which reads, the legal point of discharge for this development must be located at 551 to 553 Mount Alexander Road, Moonee Ponds. So I'll put that part of the amendment to the vote, please. All those for? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Isa. Oh, it's unanimous, actually. Unanimous. So that amendment is carried and will now form part of the substantive motion in its entirety. So, Councillor Byrne, you were talking. I didn't make a note of how much longer you had left on the clock when you moved that amendment. Did you wish to speak to the substantive motion for a minute or so, or are you happy? Okay. So, would any councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. As I mentioned, I won't be supporting this application. I know some comments have been made around the chamber about drawing some similarities between this application and the Shooter Street application that came to us, I think it was last meeting. This is in a different part of the MPAC precinct. It's in a residential or increasingly residential area. It's replacing houses, and it's the height that this presents for this area is currently not complementary or matched to the south. So it is introducing a new built form. On the whole, I think there is an apartment block nearby, but it's from there onwards, it's a single and double storey sort of residential area. So it's quite a different presentation that this one's introducing, which is very different to the Shooter Street context. This application is 2.9, is it 2.9 or 2.9 metres above the preferred, albeit discretionary, height. And it probably wouldn't worry me so much, except that there's also, they're not only going up further than we would like, but they're also going down. And the way that this particular development's been constructed is that it includes a basement with habitable spaces, including the communal area, which I note is conditioned for relocation, which will require some redesign. But because the basement is below 1.2 metres above ground level, it doesn't contribute to the floor area ratio. So it is quite, I think I can say, cheeky approach to the floor area ratio, which is what we've introduced into the MPAC planning scheme as a density control. And in introducing a whole level below the 1.2 ground level, they are circumventing what we have. We haven't put in mandatory heights. We've put in mandatory floor area ratios, and this is the first development that's coming to us that I think is subverting our intent, and not only subverting it downwards, but then also putting 2.9 metres on top. So I don't support that approach, and I don't support the excess car spaces. This is the driveway is very. If I might just have a 30-second extension. I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor. I'll be as quick as I can. The entry to the underground, the 2 levels of underground car parking, is right on an intersection. I think the fewer cars that we have going in and out of that driveway, the safer and the better. We have put in place, we have a number of different approaches coming to us about cars. We seem to have some developments that want no cars at all, some that want some excess for private car collections, and then some that want, we seem to be having applications with a very wide range of car requests, and maybe we just need to stick to our policy.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Does any councillor wish to speak on the motion? Otherwise, there has been dissent. So, Councillor Hodgson, would you like to close?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, to be honest, I share a lot of the concerns that Councillor Isa's raised. My assessment of the officer's recommendation was that, a lot had been done to try and address and minimise and bring into a net community benefit those variations from our standards and policies and planning scheme. The deletion of the condition around car spaces is, I consider, as I voted, and I won't speak to again, but not as good outcome. On the whole, on the balance, to be honest, I'm a bit in flux here because that might be the tipping point for me. But look, it still does provide some new housing stock where we really do need it. It's otherwise generally compliant. I agree that it does push the boundary of what we tried to do with our FAR in the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre, but the reality is that inside the activity centre, I do believe that we have to get a bit more comfortable with some higher density, even on the edges, and I do understand the implications of that to those neighbouring residents. That's not a very persuasive right of reply, but look, this is a borderline application, and ultimately I think I will fall on the side of it having a net community benefit. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Okay, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Sharp. All those against? Councillor Isa. That vote is carried. That motion is carried, sorry. Okay, 9.2 Community Engagement Policy Review. Councillors. Councillor Adams is coming back. Thank you. Okay, 9.2, councillors. The officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Isa.
I'll move the officer's recommendation, thanks.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Hodgson, thank you. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Look, community engagement policy is one of our most critical policies, and it was referred to tonight in some of the questions with that reference to how we make sure as a council we are listening and listening to community, engaging community in all sorts of processes of council. The community engagement policy doesn't specifically refer, though, to the governance rules and the ways that people can interact with council, albeit through, whether it's through questions or public forums, which I noted wasn't mentioned in the questions, the answers this evening. Our public forums are a very important way of people engaging with councillors. Our community engagement policy sets out how we engage with community around a range of different consultations. Sections 55 and 56 of the new Local Government Act require councils to have a community engagement policy and require us to embed in that policy several principles which are outlined in section 56. And those go through the requirement that one of the requirements that I think is quite interesting is that it includes a requirement on how we loop back to community around the outcomes of consultation. So not just how thorough our processes are, what deliberative consultation means, how we include and make sure that all of our community has an opportunity to have a say, but importantly, how we then report back to community. Our policy was first put in place in 2021 and has undergone some review. It came to us in November last year for some workshopping, and it's gone out to community consultation over quite some time. That wasn't me. The feedback that we've had has been interesting, and the engagement, or the consultation report is a very interesting read in terms of how people feel about engagement with council. It can be quite a controversial topic, whether people feel heard, and sometimes people don't feel heard if council doesn't agree. And I think, that's the difficulty with community engagement, is that we are trying to engage with 140,000 people. Sometimes we're engaging with specific stakeholder subsets of that. Sometimes we've got the deliberate engagement panels where there have been random selection of demographically relevant and aligned or by ratio of council area. But whether people expect that their views will necessarily make their way into council policy is not the measure by which engagement can be assessed. And it's a really tricky thing, and it's one of the most difficult things as councillors to make sure that we enable people to be heard and people of all diverse views to be heard, while also making sure our policy is robust, evidence-based and reflective of the wide diversity of views. So I think the review of this policy has tried to take on board as much feedback as possible. It's something that is always iterative, always being improved, and our own practices as councillors are always subject to that improvement as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Look, I will briefly say, as Councillor Isa's outlined, this policy came into effect as a result of changes to the Local Government Act in 2020, and it was pulled together, and a lot of councils were a little bit green on, I guess, how to exactly enliven those sections of the Act when the policy came into practice or came into endorsement. We have the benefit of a few years of that policy in practice now, and as I've said previously in the chamber, I'm really proud of the way that our organisation has matured in the way that we understand and conduct engagement. I think that the report really shows and highlights some of the strengths of the way we do community engagement, including our deliberative panels. I think the changes to the policy really strengthen some of those things that have come out as real positives, and responds well to that community expectation that we heard through the report on this review in terms of what people expect when we engage with them. There's also been, from my perspective, a really great buy-in from all departments within our organisation to really understand why we do engagement, how we do it and how we do it well. And I think that is, whilst the engagement policy really governs how we engage with community specifically on kind of policy and procedure changes, I think what it has done is strengthened our engagement more broadly with the community as their experience of our organisation as kind of open, transparent and responsive. What I would love to see is, in the next iteration of this policy, a further maturity to sort of try and understand and create a seamless interaction between that engagement and the sort of democratic principles of our work as councillors, and I think that's sort of the next challenge that we're facing. But really pleased to see this and endorse the hard work of the officers to date on preparing this for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? I'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.3, deferral of the Bowen Reserve Water Sensitive Urban Design Project. So, councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Adams?
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson, thank you. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This motion seeks to defer the construction of the Bowen Reserve Water Sensitive Urban Design Project to July 2024 in order to be eligible to receive grant funding from the Commonwealth Government's Urban Rivers and Catchments Program, which is restricted to projects that commence construction in the 24-25 financial year. The grant would be a significant saving to Council at approximately $600,000. The project aims to address the significant scouring and flooding issues within Bowen Reserve, as well as achieve improved water quality and biodiversity in the Moonee Ponds Creek via the construction of a vegetated swale and rain garden. Due to procurement and construction timeframes, part of the project budget will need to be carried forward into the new financial year and the works fully completed in 24-25 anyway, so it makes sense to try for the grant as the project meets the criteria required to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Look, just really quickly, it's a nice reminder that this project is on the cards, and whilst there will be a short delay on it while we wait for the grant results, I think this is a really great outcome. We do really fantastic work in this space of improving the treatment of water in the municipality, and I'm happy to see that supported through a federal grant scheme. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Put that to the vote then. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, 9.4, review of the extension of the operation and heating of the Keilor East Leisure Centre outdoor pool. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to move that I might just, for ease sake, I might just read out the motion that I have here. So that Council resolves to A, note the visitation data, cost, community feedback and carbon emission increases from the extended opening of the Keilor East Leisure Centre outdoor pool. B, note that the current trial for the extended outdoor pool opening hours concludes on 14th of April 2024. C, define the outdoor pool opening period to be from the commencement of the September school holidays to the end of April school holidays, subject to the 2024/25 budgeting process. And D, request the CEO to explore the applicability of the federal government's Community Energy Upgrades Fund grants to electrify council facilities, including Kelsey, KELC, and apply this grant in current or future rounds if a project is feasible and co-contribution is available, as per on the screen.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to your motion?
I will, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. And again, I'm looking forward to the debate around the chamber for this one. We love our outdoor pool up in Keilor East, and I think that when we're talking about community consultation, our community tells us so. With all the consultation that occurred, we had about 90% of people say how much they want to keep it open for. Now, if we go back in time, I think most people around this chamber would probably agree that we probably would have made some changes in regards to how we're heating the outdoor pool. However, we can't go back in time, but we can change things going forward. So I'd like to thank Councillor Isa for helping put together some of the words, particularly in regards to point D, which is exploring one of the current federal grants and other grants similar to this if they have future rounds, to see whether there is a way that we can change getting out of gas for our outdoor pool. Now, I think that by doing that, if we are able to change, there will be close to 100% of people wanting our outdoor pool to remain open year round, but we're not at that point, and even if we were to get a grant, it would take a considerable amount of time. So what do we do in the meantime? Well, the year that we've just had, we kept it open from the start of the September holidays till the April holidays. Some people thought, no, it should have been December till March, and then there were people who thought, oh my gosh, this isn't enough, it should be all year round. And then there's varying people in between. So I feel that no matter what motion went up tonight, we're not going to make anyone, definitely not going to make everyone happy. And I'm probably meeting somewhere in the middle, which is saying we're going to extend it, so not just from those 3 months or 3 and a bit months, but we're not going to go 12 months, we're going to go for around that in-between time. It's hard. I know that there's an added cost to keeping our outdoor pool open, but I know how much everyone loves our pool. We love our pool so much, we spend a lot of money on it. We are the showpiece for the inner northwest when it comes to outdoor pools. We've had people from Vic Swim come out, ministers come out, because they want to stand in front and do presentations in front of our pool. We know how good it is, and I think the community want it open. We pride ourselves on MV 2040 and being a healthy city. We've got something that we can get people of all ages out there being fit, being happy. I think that it's worth our expense to keep it open for longer. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. When I first got on council, this was one of the major issues back then, that people wanted an outdoor pool. They wanted a heated outdoor pool. This project has been a great success for community consultation and for community wants and community needs. And like Councillor Byrne said, this is a showcase for the Northwest. But not only the Northwest, we've got other councils from country Victoria coming out to having a look at this as well too. I'm fully supportive of this as well. I'm also fully supportive of looking at alternative ways of heating this pool. But I'm also glad to see that we've got looking in D that we're going to be looking at all council facilities, because the Ascot Vale Leisure Centre, that's got a couple of old boilers, gas boilers that haven't been changed for 25 years. And if we were going to go for any funding, that would be the first ones that I'd be looking at, because what we've got at East Keilor is basically brand new. So I wouldn't want to change something that's brand new and leave something that's 25 years old. So my priority would be to look at Ascot Vale and look at some other council facilities before we go and start changing brand new ones. But not to say that we're not going to do it, but there's got to be a pecking order here, and I'd rather see old infrastructure replaced than to just rip out new infrastructure that's only 12 or 24 months old. So fully supportive of looking at alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa?
Thanks. Look, it is a really tricky one, and many of us weren't on council during the building phase of the swimming pool, so we don't know what choices people had before them in terms of the heating or the opening hours, and why decisions were made the way they were made. And it is a difficult position to be in, where we can see from the community perspective, and the community feedback has been fairly resoundingly in favour of increased opening hours, and that's so understandable when there's a facility there that has been built. I can understand the perception of wanting to use it at all times of the year. The flip side is, of course, the cost of doing so, and the intensity of the carbon emissions given the heating choices that were made in the building stages of the pool. When we had the year-round trial, the data was really it was very difficult to justify from that first trial extending the hours over winter. The usage just was not high enough. The cost was too high. The cost and the emissions from the heating just too high. This latest trial shows real increases in patronage, which is terrific. It's wonderful that so many more people are using the facility. And on the basis of that increased patronage, it becomes difficult to deny people that opportunity to use a facility. The logic of that doesn't flow. So it is a really difficult equation of balancing environmental consideration, financial cost to council, and then our ratepayer enjoyment of a facility that they'd like to enjoy. And then the other question of equity across the municipality, where we've got Queen's Park Pool that's not been upgraded and is closed for the bulk of the year, and Ascot Vale Leisure Centre that continues to have some problems that needs some upgrades. So all of these factors are built into our decision making, and it's not an easy one. Thanks to Councillor Byrne for acknowledging the point D. I'd like to also acknowledge people in the community who've brought that to our attention and have made us aware of the opportunities. Working with officers to put together that point D there. Sorry, Mayor, could I just have another 15 seconds? Sorry. On balance, I think that the patronage has grown such that I think that the extended hours between September and April are justifiable, but I would like us to keep a very close watch on things, and it must come with an effort to reduce the carbon emissions from the pool.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other councillor wish to speak on this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Yay. Okay. Next is 9.5, award of contract for Military Road and Clarendon Street traffic signalisation, brackets negotiation number 1000047. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Sypek.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Byrne, thank you. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. For those who don't know where this place is on Military Road, it's where McDonald's is in Avondale Heights. And it's been a very, very high collision area there for a number of years. The community has been calling out for signalisation there as well too. And also it compounds the whole traffic area there as well when people want to turn into Coles or turn into McDonald's. So it just becomes a little bit of a nightmare there, and I think the traffic lights are going to work well, even though they've got pedestrian crossings just sort of about 20 metres away. So I'm sure there's going to be some kind of amalgamation of the two, which I think will work out far better. I'm glad to see there are no speed cameras or red light traffic cameras going to be installed with these lights, so that's a bonus, and I look forward to it, and I think the community will be very, very happy with the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Byrne, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I always do enjoy Councillor Sypek's little history lessons. This is, I suppose, when I talk about Avondale Heights and we talk about what we want to do when we're creating cities, we talk about hubs and getting everything together. And in this particular area, you've got a maternal child and health, you've got a childcare, you've got a kinder, you've got a library, you've got a Coles, you've got a Macca's. Like you've got what can make your life particularly good in this area. But what you also have is a lot of housing and a lot of cars. And what we need to do is help fix that by having these lights go in. This has been a very, very long time coming, and I would like to thank everyone with their patience on this, both the residents that go up and down Miliara and Military Road, and also the officers that have worked hard to ensure that this project didn't fall off the radar where it could have many times. It is so exciting that we're finally getting to the point of a $1.5 million set of lights going in, and I don't know how we even cut ribbons with light openings, but I'm sure Councillor Sypek and I and the Mayor and everyone else, obviously, when it finally happens, there'll be a nice community party, and obviously everyone can come. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. 9.6, response to notice of motion number 2023-37, kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Isa?
I'll move the officer's recommendation, thanks.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Adams? Okay, Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
This issue's had a really long history. It's almost 10 years since it was first brought to the chamber, this problem of not having a sessional kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. And thanks to previous councillors who've raised it over the years, it's been a real problem though to find a suitable location. And so thanks to Councillor Bedio for again raising this more recently. I think it's been raised in 2016, 2018, and then again to again ask officers to see what sort of analysis can be done of some suitable locations, because at the moment there's some really good opportunities for funding. And while the state government is committed to some not only increasing hours and increasing early education for 3 and 4-year-old children, there's some really good funding opportunities, so we'd be silly not to jump on that and try our best to find a location to meet this need. And we know there is a need. The report sets out for us that while we have a number of kindergartens integrated with childcare, private childcare, not-for-profit childcare in the area, we are still having upwards of 120 children, families choosing sessional kindergarten. Now, we're not quite sure exactly why that is. It might be because that is funded. It might be because parents have different work habits at the moment, but and it's not something that has necessarily been predicted by some of our data, but it's what we're finding, that by 2029 there will be 224 children without a sessional sessional kindergarten place in Moonee Ponds. So we have to get our skates on and really try to address the absence of sessional kindergarten in Moonee Ponds, because what's happening is that children in Moonee Ponds are of course then moving to where there are sessional kindergarten places, whether it's in Ascot Vale or Essendon, and then people in those areas are having to adjust. And they're, as one of the many mothers around the table, and not to say that their fathers wouldn't necessarily have done this too, but those of us who walk our children to local places of education know how valuable it is to educate children from whether it's kindergarten right through to the other end of schooling, to educate children locally makes a big difference to community building. So trying to find a location is really difficult, but this report has a confidential attachment that makes some recommendations to us. And because that's confidential, I won't be able to speak to that further. But again, I hope that we can make some progress on this much needed issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I think Councillor Isa summed that up very well. Thank you. I won't have much more to add to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Look, it is it's really great to see this report come in its form, and I'll echo Councillor Isa's words of thanks to all the councillors who in previous meetings, including Councillor Bedio, who have pushed this issue in the chamber, because it's one that obviously there's a current demand for, and we know with projected population growth there will only be a compounding impact on that demand. Part B of the officer's recommendation, which outlines the reasons why it's not possible to open a kindergarten for operations from next year. Obviously, capitalising on the current state government funding is really important, and whilst the reasons are obviously very clear of why we can't have it operational by February 2025, I do think that the number of times this has come through the chamber has hit the accelerator enough that we're now, really getting really seriously into looking at the options for a location, which is honestly the key barrier to establishing a Moonee Ponds kindergarten, which I think everyone agrees is necessary. We just simply didn't have an appropriate site. I will move an amendment that we'll need to discuss some of the details in the confidential attachment, but I won't do that in speaking to it now, because I wanted to leave the opportunity for any other councillor who would wish to speak on this item in the public forum, because it will require us moving into confidential to discuss and appropriately debate some of the content of that confidential attachment. But I just want to thank again councillors and officers for the huge amount of work and due diligence to date on getting really serious on finding a site to meet the demand for Moonee Ponds families who want to access what is obviously a very valuable council service of sessional kindergarten. So it's really great to see this report come through. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Bedio?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you. Look, I concur with my colleagues around the room today and would like to, in particular, thank the officers for working on and collating such a fantastic report, much of which we can't share with many people. But I will say that it is a fantastic and very comprehensive report. And obviously, this report was spurred on from a notice of motion that I put forward last year. I did set what some would consider to be a very maybe unrealistic goal about ambitious goal of opening a council-operated kindergarten by February 2025. Now, clearly, officers have identified that that's not possible. But they say, shoot for the stars and you land on the moon. And hopefully we've got some great working collateral that we can go forward with and that we can move forward, because it's clear through this report that there is an unmet demand for sessional kindergarten in Moonee Ponds, and that's something we've known for a long time, and it's something that the officers have identified as something where there will be a growing demand for sessional kindergarten. So it's imperative that we move on this and that we look at this in the short term, not into the long term. But again, I would like to extend my thanks to the officers for their work on this one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Byrne?
Look, I think this is... thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think this is definitely something that we have to do at some point in time. Thank you to the ward councillors, Councillor Bedio, Isa and Hodgson, and also previous ward councillors. I know Councillor Nicole Marshall was a big advocate for a kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. I think one thing that also can't be undersold is that the kindergarten reforms that were announced a few years ago now are life-changing. They are so massive, and the infrastructure shortage that we have across the municipality to be able to cater for all of our young people, to be able to enable them to have the best start in life, is significant. We used to offer 5 hours of 3-year-old kinder and 15 hours of 4-year-old kinder. By the end of this decade, we'll need to be offering 15 hours of 3-year-old kinder and 30 hours of 4-year-old kinder. that is massive. We are one of very few councils that have our kindergartens so closely held and as a service that we provide, and we provide the service and we provide the infrastructure. And I suppose I had to look up the saying because I often stuff up sayings in the chamber, but strike while the iron's hot. Whilst the state government's on board, whilst we're on board, if we can actually finally get some significant funding to go towards a kindergarten in Moonee Ponds that we needed prior to these reforms, like, we may need a lot more than just this. Love what our kinder team do, and we've got a fantastic kinder program, and one of the reasons why people want to go into our sessional kinder programs is because they trust it. They trust the product that we have and want to continue. And we get plenty of complaints every year of people not getting their preferred site. And up in Rosehill Ward, we do have this supposed flow-on effect. I suppose people often who are travelling into the city don't necessarily want to backtrack to take their kids to kindergarten. So any kindergartens that we can build, I suppose, further down the tram line will be a benefit to the whole of the municipality and definitely stop that backlog. So thank you to everyone who's worked on this. We're not going to get there by the 1st of February 2025, but it is a friendly reminder for anyone who is thinking of enrolling their child in kindergarten for February 2025 that I think the applications will be open in April, which will be very, very soon. So the planning that goes into this, obviously get your kids enrolled. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Hodgson?
Deputy Mayor, may I please move an amendment?
Yep.
However, as my amendment requires discussion of the contents of a confidential attachment, I will need to move a procedural motion, please.
Yes.
That Council resolves to adjourn the debate on item 9.6, response to notice of motion number 2023/37, kindergarten in Moonee Ponds, to section 12, confidential reports on the agenda, due to the need to discuss the contents of confidential attachment 1, which contains information relating to A, council business information, being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, and C, land use planning information, being information that if prematurely released is likely to encourage speculation in land values in particular identified sites for the establishment of a council-operated kindergarten in Moonee Ponds.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Isa, thank you.
For procedural? Yeah.
Should I check that? Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just really briefly, Deputy Mayor, as we outlined in debate there, this is an item of great interest to our community, and we wanted to ensure as great a transparency as possible in our debate. So the report came to us in the public section of the meeting because we are all very invested in this and we have views, I guess, on the next steps, which require a little bit more discussion of the confidential attachment. It's necessary to move our debate into the confidential part of the meeting.
Deputy Mayor, just in case there is a problem under Rule 46.3, perhaps someone else might just like to second the motion.
I will just ask for a seconder again, if that's okay. So Councillor Hodgson has moved to a procedural motion. Do I have a seconder for that procedural motion, please? Councillor Byrne, thank you. Okay, Councillor Hodgson spoken. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak? Great. If any, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So that takes us to notices of motion, and we do not have any tonight. Councillors, do we have any urgent business for tonight's meeting? No. Thank you. We will now then come to confidential reports, and as we have just had that one report 9.6 moved procedurally, we'll need to move into close the meeting and move to discuss that confidential report. So, councillors, can I have a mover and seconder? The council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66-2, or in brackets 2, of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss item 9.6, response to notice of motion number 2023-37, kindergarten in Moonee Ponds, as they are considered confidential under the terms of section 3, in brackets 1, in brackets A, council business information being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, and in brackets C, land use planning information being information that if prematurely released is likely to encourage speculation in land values, in particular identified sites for the establishment of a council-operated kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Hodgson. Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adams. Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, well, that brings us to the close of our meeting for tonight. So I'd like to say thank you for those who are watching via live stream, and apologies for the technical difficulties that have been encountered tonight. I don't know how it has gone on the live stream, but we've been able to live stream, and that's the main thing, I guess. But the recording of the meeting will be uploaded to YouTube when we are able to access that site, so you can watch at a later date. Thank you very much for our student delegation from City of Matsuburo for coming in again. Thank you very much. And thank you all to the rest of the gallery for attending tonight's council meeting as well. So the meeting is officially closed at 8:18. Thank you very much.